Hello web world, back at the fly tying bench, Big Mike here. This morning we're going to tie up a very popular topwater fly. It's designed for bluegill, red ear, or chinkapin as we call them, for brim, for large brim. This is part of a much larger order that's going down to Mr. Leroy Frederick over in Kaplan, Louisiana. I tie this fly on a mustad hook number R43. It's a lightweight nymph hook. It's in a size 10 with an extra long shank. So we're going to take that hook, secure it firmly in our vise. Turn this vise a little bit. There we go. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put the popper body on there. I make these popper bodies myself. They're made out of craft foam, which you could buy at any craft store. I get mine at Hobby Lobby. And the bodies look like this. Basically a little cylinder, alternating colors. This one will happen to be black and green. You can make them in a solid color, solid black, solid green, solid yellow. The craft foam comes in all sorts of colors. The way I make those, I buy these sheets of craft foam. This is about 1/4 of a sheet that you get for $1 at Hobby Lobby. You can see it's fairly thin, probably 1/8 of an inch thin. And I buy many colors. So the way I make this, I take this sheet of foam, lay it down on a craft table, and I spray this side with a spray adhesive. Then I take the next sheet, lay it on top of that. On top of that sheet, I'll spray the adhesive, place another sheet. Then on top of that, I'll spray, place another sheet. I'll spray, place another sheet. So I end up with a stack of 5 of these sheets glued together. Then I'll take a piece of 2x6 lumber, set it on top, and put something heavy on top of the lumber, and I leave that overnight to cure, to dry. The next morning, I'll have a sheet that's 5 layers thick. So then I'll take that sheet and set it on top of the same piece of 2x6, and I will take a hollow punch, which you can buy at like Harbor Freight. You can get a whole set of them for like $10. in various sizes. I use a size 5/16, and what I do is I set the punch on it, whack it with a hammer, and out comes the little cylinder. Out of $5 of materials, I could probably get well over 300 of these, keeping the cost down. Then I'll take my little foam cylinder and I'll take my bodkin, which is nothing but a needle with a handle on it. And in the center of that foam body, I'll punch a hole lengthwise. Comme ça, as my Cajun friends would say. Then I'll slide that off of there, and we'll slide it onto our hook, kind of working it back and forth through that hole that we just made. Now it's on the hook. But you see, at this point it'll slide, it'll spin. We don't want that to be happening. So we're going to take our thread. For this fly I'm using black. And we're going to start right behind the hook eye, and we're going to wrap it toward that foam body. And we're going to snip off the excess. Wrap it back up to the eye. And we're going to whip finish that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because 7 is a magical number. Pull it tight. Snip it off. Now we're going to take some super glue and just put a dot on that thread. Now we're going to run that foam body up toward the eye. We don't want to crowd the eye. And if we happen to push some of that super glue into the eye, all you have to do is flick it with your fingernail like that, and that glue will come out. And we're going to take a look at it, make sure it's in a good position. And the reason we've done that is that'll glue that body into place. It'll no longer, once the glue dries, it will no longer slide back and forth or spin around the hook shank. Our next step, we're going to put the tail on here. So we're going to take our thread and start right behind the foam body, work back to about the hook point. Not all the way to the end of the shank, just to where the hook point is. Snip that off. Now the tail on this fly is going to be a marabou feather. Marabou is a very light, wispy feather, and when it's in the water, these fibers just undulate, wave in the water. We don't want to put the whole thing on there, that would be ridiculous. We want the tail to be proportional to the body. a little longer than the length of the body. So we're going to kind of fold that back to length and kind of pinch it, cut it off, and set that on the top of the hook shank, running those fibers all the way up to that foam body, and tying that in real well. Run our thread back up to the foam body. Next, we're going to put a little flash. We use a material called crystal flash. Comes in a long strand. And we're going to measure about 2 lengths of the tail. And snip that off to our desired length. And we're going to take that piece of crystal flash, after dropping it on the floor, and at about the middle of it, we're going to lay that across the top of the hook shank and take a couple wraps. We're going to take that piece that's pointing forward and we're going to fold it to the rear, kind of holding both pieces back, and we're going to wrap back toward the hook point. That adds us a little flash in the tail. Now, as you can see, we've got this gap between the head and the tail. So we want to do something to fill that in. So we're going to take a black hackle. These are chicken feathers coming off a particular area of the chicken. So we'll get one of appropriate size. That one's not very pretty. Let me look over on this side. Here's a pretty one. Pull that off. Nice pretty chicken hackle. Holding it by the tip, we're going to kind of splay those little fibers out like that. Now we're going to take the very tip of that hackle, lay it against the hook shank, and tie it in. Tie it in right behind the foam head, and tie it all the way back to where our tail began, and then work the thread back up to the foam head. Now what we're going to do is what is called palmering that hackle feather. And to do that, we use this tool called hackle pliers. It basically helps you hold on to that hackle as you're palmering it. Now palmering is a fancy word for nothing but wrapping that hackle around the hook shank. And we're going to go in the direction opposite of how we wrapped our thread. So if you wrapped your thread over the top away from you, then we're going to wrap the hackle over the top towards us. And just keep wrapping it around. And as you wrap it around, these fibers splay out. So we're just going to kind of spiral that back up toward the eye of the hook, toward that foam body. Once we get back up to the foam body, we're going to take our thread, run it underneath the hackle and over. Underneath the hackle, over the hook shank. Do that about 4 times. And holding our thread out of harm's way with our finger, we're going to snip that hackle off. And now you see we have this nice collar in between the foam head and the tail. And in the water, these look like little legs sticking down in the water. So now we're going to whip finish and tie that off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because 7 is a magical number. Pull that tight, snip off the thread. Now last step, we're going to take our bone dry made by Solarez. It's a very thin epoxy that is cured or hardened under UV light, ultraviolet light. So we're going to put a thin coat over that thread that we whip finished. Then we take the magic wand, which is a ultraviolet flashlight, and we cure that epoxy. It only takes about 10 seconds for that epoxy to dry hard as a rock. And there we have it, the Jittabug. Great fly for any type of brim, and even bass will hit it. Rides high in the water. You throw it out there, you give it a little twitch. You don't give it a hard strip, just a little twitch, just enough to put a little movement in it. Of course, this fly and all the other flies and jigs I tie are available at a very low price at Big Mike's Jigs and Flies on the internet at www.bmjigs.com. Go check it out. You might see something you like. Till next time, this is Big Mike. Tight lines, everybody.